Hello class, in this tutorial I'd like to show you how to set up and build your very first web page and get that file saved and opening in a browser. And this is going to be the Windows version of this tutorial. There is a Mac version as well, but as I've mentioned in other tutorials, the setup is going to be very similar no matter what platform you are on. I will record all of my videos on the Mac side using a program called Brackets. But if you want to use Windows and Notepad, you can do that. This is what this tutorial will show you how to get started with. Now you could also use the Brackets text editing program on Windows as well if you would like to do that. But for this demonstration, I think it would be best if I show you how to use Notepad, since that is a program that is already installed on your computer, and get started editing like that. So first off, as far as what you need to open up to follow along with this tutorial, I would suggest opening up w3schools.com and then just click on Learn HTML. And we're going to look at this very first example right here. Just use the code from this to get started. And then you also need to open up your Notepad editing program. See, actually on this, I believe I might go to HTML introduction. Yeah, so I'm on HTML introduction on Explorer, and now I'm going to open up Notepad. Now before I do that, just a quick note about browsers, which browser you choose. It's totally up to you. If you want to use Explorer, Firefox, Chrome, Safari, any browser is going to be fine. The only thing I would recommend is that you check your work, check your websites in different browsers to make sure that it looks okay. Most of what we are doing in this class, the browsers will support pretty much everything. It's when you get into creating some more complicated websites that you could have some browser compatibility issues. But we'll talk more about that as we're building our sites. So what you want to do is click your Windows Start here on the bottom left-hand corner. I'll just go the long way. I'll do All Apps right here. And then we'll just scroll down and grab Notepad. Okay, so with this particular method of getting Notepad, it's under Windows Accessories. Might be different depending on the version of Windows you are on. And there it is. Okay, it's an untitled document. So what we want to do here, I'll sort of arrange the screen so I'll have two things side by side. That's kind of how I like to edit if you're starting out with this. Okay, so I'll just move this over. So if you want to set your screen up like I'm doing right here, you can do that. Just arrange it so you've got a browser on one side and then your Notepad text editor on the other. All right, and what I'm going to do is just go ahead and create my first home page, which is going to be my index.html page. Now you can use this example right here, this code. Now in the interest of time, I'm not going to type out every single line here as I'm showing you. You might want to do that just to get into the habit of hand coding and typing out. But for right now, what I'm going to do is just, I'll start typing a little bit and then I'll copy paste some of this just to save time. One thing here before you start to write and before you save, you want to make sure that your Notepad is set to word wrap. So make sure that your word wrap is on. And that really should be all you need, I believe. We can go to page setup and double check some of the settings here before we go into that. So it's fine. Nothing you really need to do here other than start writing your HTML code. So I'm going to start out with the doc type, which basically declares that this document is going to be HTML5. So it tells the browser that it's going to be an HTML file to interpret. So when I'm writing this out here, there's really not a whole lot to it. You've got these brackets or less than or greater than signs. You'll have head, HTML, title, body, things like that. Just to kind of tell you a little bit more about what these are. HTML is pretty obvious. That tells the browser that you are going to start with the HTML code and it's going to start reading that. So we'll go ahead and put that in next. And we're still at version HTML5. And next up is going to be the head of your document. And you'll see head, title here in this example, and then closing tag head. So basically what the head is, that's going to be kind of what happens behind the scenes, and that would include your title. That means what's displayed in the top of your browser. Also things like JavaScript and CSS Also maybe keywords for search engines, things like that, things that you don't see directly on your browser window here where the content is displayed. That's what goes in the head. So I'll just copy paste this for now. So if you do want to copy paste, I'm just going to copy here and I'll right click and paste. And in this case here, I'll change the page title and I'll call it Drew's First Page or First Site. Also, you'll notice that certain tags have a closing tag to them. So if you see the title is open, you'll see the greater than, less than signs, but you'll also see a /. So that means you are closing that particular tag, and that surrounds your content. So my title is called Drew's First Site, and then I have the opening title and the closing title. Not all tags require a closing tag, but the head is one that does. So is the title, and then so is the body. Next up, I'm going to space this a little bit. Spaces like vertically, they do not matter here in the code, but if you accidentally put in a space like here, you can see where I've got space around that greater than sign. In that case, that would cause a problem in many cases, so you have to be careful about the spaces there. Next up, so we're going to do the body. So everything that you see displayed on the browser's page here, images, content, links, that's going to be within the body. So that's where most of your code is going to go. Now in this case, for this example, we have an H1 and a paragraph. So an H1 is a heading. There are going to be 6 levels here of headings. We'll just do H1 and we'll leave it. Say my first paragraph, and then, or my first heading, and then the second is my first paragraph. A paragraph is basically a line. So if you put separate paragraphs in there, they'll each be on a separate line. With one space between them, one line space between them. Alright, so those are all done. Let's go ahead and finish this up. So we need to close the body tag, hit return, and then close the HTML tag. And again, some mistakes that you make, the browser will correct those for you. So if you forget to close like your HTML tag, the browser will probably close that for you, but you don't want to leave that up to chance. You want to make sure your code is all correct. So let's scan through this really quickly here. We've got the doc type, tells the browser that this is going to be HTML, declares the document as HTML. Here's the opening HTML tag, where that means all the code is going to start. The head, that's where the title, the behind the scenes things happen. The body, that's where all the content is displayed. So we've got a heading and a paragraph, and then closing body and closing HTML. And now the next thing that you're going to want to do is save this file. Now you probably should have done that first, or I probably should have done that very first thing. Doesn't really matter with this demonstration because it's just practice and we don't have much HTML code yet. So we're going to go ahead and save this, and we want to create a new folder for our website and then save this as an index.html within that folder. Okay, so I'm going to go to File at the top of Notepad and do a save. And let's just drop this on the desktop. So I'll click desktop here and I'll right click on it and click new folder. So file and folder structure is very important when it comes to website development. This may be pretty simple for some of you, but if you are struggling at all with creating folders and saving in different locations on your computer, then let me know. I'll be glad to help you out. But you have to make sure that you save everything in the same location when you are creating your website. Otherwise, the links eventually will not work. So I'm going to do a new folder, and I'll call it Drew's Site, or I'll just call it Drew First Site. And then double click on that, and I'm going to go ahead and save this. Now, to save this, you want to change the Save As type right here to All Files. It's very important that you do not save this as a .txt file. That is one reason I like that brackets text editor. So even if you're on Windows, I would encourage you to download that and try it out, see if you like it, because it's specifically designed for HTML editing. So it's better than Notepad, but that's something that I'll just leave up to you because Notepad works just fine as well. That's typically what everyone uses when you're getting started with hand coding. So save as type, I've changed that to all files. And the first page of your site needs to be named index, all lowercase, no spaces, .html. Alright, so type in that extension. Again, all lowercase and no spaces. That's very important when you're saving your HTML files. Make sure you're in the correct location. So you can see right there it says desktop and then Drew First Site. And then just go ahead and click save. Alright, and then it should have saved it for you right there. Now let's go ahead and try to open this up. In this case, it's a little bit confusing because this is actually my Mac desktop just showing on the PC, so I've got this saved in a different location. So you may see it on your desktop, or you may have to go and search for it depending on where you put it. So I'm just going to go to the File Explorer right here underneath Windows, and then I'll just find it right there. So here's Desktop, and then it should show up right on my desktop when I click on this, and there's called Drew First Site. So now I'll go ahead and double click on that. Okay, so again, I'm just opening up that folder. That's all I'm doing. Looks like I got a couple extra files in there that I could get rid of if I wanted. But all I'm doing is finding that folder that I just created. And let me go ahead and double click on that. And then you can open up this index file in a variety of different ways. You can right click and do an open with and choose your browser. I'll go ahead and do it that way. You could actually go to the browser itself and do a file open, or you can double click on the file. Usually it'll open up your default browser, but I kind of like to right click on it because that allows me to choose between editing programs here or browsers. In this case, I want to open it with Internet Explorer. It's already open in Notepad. I'm gonna get these side by side again so you can see. Alright, so here's what the page looks like, and then let me bring Notepad back up again, and we'll put these side by side here. Alright, so there they are side by side. You can see that this code is now being interpreted just like this in my browser. Now let's make a change here and refresh the browser, and then you can see how to kind of edit back and forth. Let's say we want to change this to an H3 just to see what that might look like. And let's copy and paste this paragraph a few times, put in 4 or 5 of these so we can see if this is working. So I'll just return and paste this in a couple times. And now what we're going to want to do is save. So there are different ways to do all of this. I'm just showing you what I think is probably the simplest way to have these open up side by side. So now if I click File, Save in Notepad again, and I go over here to my browser, and I click Refresh right here, F5, or you can right click Refresh depending on what browser. It might be called Reload. And there it is. So you can see it changed the first heading to an H3, which is smaller, obviously, than the H1. And now it has 4 of these paragraphs instead of 1. So that is basically it. Now the other question that I get from time to time is getting back in here, and editing can be tricky sometimes. So let's say if we close and exit Notepad completely. The easiest way again is, you can probably figure this out, right click and then open in Notepad. If you already have Notepad open, let's say you've got it open here, you can do a File Open. I'll go to Desktop and Drew's First Site. Now this might happen. It says no items match your search. Notice that it's set by default to a .txt file. This is probably the biggest problem that I get from beginning students, is opening up and finding that HTML file. So it's really important that you make sure you change this to all files when you are saving and opening. If you leave it at .txt, it's not going to work. The browser's not going to interpret it because it doesn't interpret TXT files correctly as HTML files. So choose all files, click your index, and click open. And now I'm back ready to edit again. Anything that I save here, I go over here to my browser and I refresh that. So that is basically the setup. And if you have any trouble getting that to work, let me know. Again, the most important thing, I believe, is that you set the file type to all files instead of .txt, and then you save it in a location and a folder where you can remember it, because when you save other HTML files and images, they have to be in that same folder. Otherwise, your links are not going to be correct when you put them in. So that's how you set up your first basic website. This is a skeleton of a web page for your home page. Save that and open it up in a browser. All right, let me know if you have any questions on that.